Everyone ready? All right, awesome. So this Monday, I was in the middle of a heated chess game against Arjun Suresh, who you might know in the audience. Give everyone a wave. Hi. This game was pretty intense. Now, at the highest levels, chess is full of tactical calculations and strategic ideas that all coalesce into something akin to a piece of art. But for us mediocre high school players, you'd be surprised how little thought we actually put into some of the moves we played. Now, for most of this game, I was actually in the lead for about the first half or so. But randomly in the middle, without thinking about it, without even deliberating it, I moved my queen up like 5 spaces on the board and lost all of my advantage. I went from being on the offensive to then having to defend for another half hour before finally suffering a crushing defeat. So while I wallowed in my mistakes, I thought about how did I make that move? Why did I make that move? And most importantly, how should I make my next one? But before I answer that question, I'd like to ask all of you something. How do you live your life? It's a pretty broad question, I know, but I want to get all of you thinking. How do you actually live your life? What goes into the decisions you make that, decide on where your life goes? How do you work towards achieving your goals or accomplishing anything that you want? The National Library of Medicine tells us that the prefrontal cortex, that's little top lobe of your brain, is the one in charge of decision making as well as the logical reasoning part of your brain. Now, this only fully develops once you hit the age of 25. So you're not making the best decisions you can until you're significantly older. However, it is shown that some people do develop this part of their brain quicker, and others, like everyone sitting in the 4th row over there to the left, need some time for it to grow. So now you're thinking, hey, I'm good at making decisions because this part of my brain is working overtime, right? Well, not necessarily. See, Susan Weinschenk, a behavioral psychologist, stated in a 2022 classroom that she titled Brain and Behavior, that 90% of the decisions that humans make are made unconsciously. She goes on to further that research has found that 90% of all decisions made by humans weighs emotion over rationality. Now, whenever scientists want to find a way to describe and envision something that's very complex in its concept, they turn to models. So today, I'll be looking at 2 models. My choice of the game of chess, as well as the game of poker, to see what we can learn about decision-making from them, apply them to real-life scenarios, and see how we can transfer that to improving the decisions we make every single day. So the first lesson I want to talk about comes from cost-benefit analysis. Those of you who have taken Mr. Edwards' AP economics class, this should look familiar to you. Cost-benefit analysis is a core tenet and should be the first thing you think about for any decision that you make. Simply put, what are you going to get out of this decision, and what is it going to cost you to make it? On the example here, the bishop on e3 has the ability to take the queen on c5 and then get recaptured by the black bishop on f8. It might take you a second to see that. For white, this is a beneficial move because they gain the queen while giving up the bishop. Pretty simple to see. For those of you who don't know, poker is a game where you're not given all of the information like in chess. You don't know what cards are in everyone else's hand. Your best option is to instead guess and use probability to reason your odds of victory. What you do in poker, as shown by the percentages, is you determine your likelihood of winning by looking at your hand and the community card, and then deciding on how much you evaluate your hand to be. The benefit of winning millions of dollars comes at the cost that you might lose thousands in the process with no guarantee of victory. But next, I want to talk about some lessons that are unique to each game. Let's start with chess. The concept of trading is built on the aforementioned cost-benefit analysis. Here on the board, I have the character card of the bishop, which is valued at 3 points. Here, an equal trade for the bishop would be another bishop, 3 pawns, or a knight. Anything less than that is not a worthwhile trade, given the positions are relatively equal. And anything above that, you should always be looking to get. Beyond chess, trading is an important concept to understand in any competitive setting. Let's say you're facing someone in a game of tennis, and they love hitting power shots and expending a ton of energy. If you're playing against them, your job should be to make them run around as much as possible while conserving as much of your energy as you can. They will tire out, and sure, you might lose the first couple of sets, but in the long term, you'll come out successful. You can flip that and say that if your opponent is the one with the stamina on you, you should be trying to end the game as quickly as possible so that their advantage isn't able to beat you. No matter how you look at trading, you must always make sure that your opponent pays for what they take from you. Do not look at what you lose as just something that's gone. Instead, try and think of it as an opportunity to diminish from something else. Always look to make the most of a bad situation. Now, you might say, what if my opponent hits strong shots and has better stamina than me? In that scenario, that's where you fold. You see, every concept I'm talking about here assumes that there is somewhat of an even chance for you to win. That is what you play the game for. This leads me to the next point, which is the lesson we learned from poker about breaking points. Now, poker strategy holds a lot of theoretical extremes. In poker, the only chip that really matters is your last one. And if you think that your hand is powerful enough to be worth an all-in, then by all means, go for it. But obviously, risking millions of dollars at a time is not something feasible for the average person. So, a more practical strategy is set yourself a limit, a betting limit of $100,000 so that you don't get consumed by the game. You will bet no more than that. You also set yourself a loss limit. If you lose around $50,000, then you quit immediately to stop yourself from digging a deeper hole that's harder to escape from. Breaking points are a very important concept to then transition into any other part of life. Understand exactly how much of a resource you're willing to expend in order to obtain what you want. Set a budget and stick to it, and you will succeed in no matter what you do. This leads me to talking about the most important lesson that we can learn from either game: understanding risks. Now, I want to first talk about a potential real-life example. Say you started an online business, and it's now month 5. Your goal for this month was to generate about $100,000 in revenue. However, at the pace you're going, you've actually generated $125,000. Now, what if someone comes up to you with a lucrative opportunity to expand your purchases farther, to make even more money? Do you take them up on the offer? No. Your goal established is $100,000. Any risk you take is a chance at deviating from the expected result. You're going to accomplish your goal at the pace you're going, because there's a chance that that lucrative opportunity turns into a loss. Don't take that chance. This concept is emulated by our two games pretty simply. As mentioned before, chess is a game of perfect information, where you see the other move, where you see all of the pieces on the board at the same time your opponent does. It's not about who has the information, but rather your ability to interpret it. Now, as far as computers are concerned, chess is a solved game. But the concept of dynamics kind of flips that on its head. You see, whenever you're in a losing position, you shouldn't try to play the best moves possible, because at that rate, your opponent, assuming they're also playing the best moves, will just defeat you. Your job, if you're losing, is to create counterplay by complicating the position in a way that you have a shot at winning. And that's where dynamics comes in. In poker, this chart is a chart of all of the potential starting hands that you get in poker. High-level players determine whether or not they fold from the gate depending on what their hand looks like. Players who are winning will be especially stingy with their hand selections because they have more to lose. However, players who are already down have less to give up, and therefore they're much more willing to play potentially weaker hands. All of of this can be coalesced into a simple lesson that you should take with you no matter what happens. Any risk you take puts your odds of victory closer to 50%. So if you're less likely to win, take a risk because you're actually improving your chances. If you're more likely to win, then do not take risks. Avoid them at all costs because that's a chance of you deviating from a guaranteed victory. Now, the lessons I've talked about today only begin to scratch the surface of what behavioral economics and the strategies of this game includes. If you're interested, I suggest that all of you delve deeper and look into these topics even more. Now, I love chess and poker, and being able to take these lessons and apply them to everyday life increases my enjoyment for them even more. When you're able to bridge the gap between what you love to what you do and who you are winning no matter what. It's only rational that I ask all of you here today to do the same. Thank you.